Welcome to Trauma Mamas, the podcast where laughter meets healing. I'm your host, Amber, and here we dive into the raw, real stories of incredible women who've faced trauma, found their strength, and now are ready to share their journey with humor, heart, and hope. Every episode is a celebration of resilience because, yes, you can heal, you can laugh, and you can rise. So grab your coffee or something stronger if you prefer, get comfy, and let's talk about it. And welcome back to another episode of Trauma Mamas. I'm your host, Amber, and today we're going to be talking about another diagnosis, unfortunately, that has impacted my life, and that is my daughter's diagnosis. So today I'm going to kind of go into a deeper dive with her diagnosis and how that all came to be, because it was pretty eventful start to finish and we're still hanging in there a little bit. So hopefully, I've talked about this in the past before with my social media group, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback about it as far as, well, I've never heard of that before, and it was very informative, and that's something that's not really talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and get right in. So my daughter, back in 2021, she was 5 at the time, and her and my husband had COVID, very mild symptoms for the most part, so they got pretty lucky. And once they started to recover, my husband was fine. My daughter started exhibiting almost immediately after the symptoms from COVID stopped, just strange behavior, just abnormal aggression. She wasn't sleeping at night. She wasn't eating properly. There was no going from calm to angry. There was no in between. There was no progression to for us to prepare for it. It was just snap and she is angry, and it was abnormal. And so we kind of looked at it and we talked. We had lots of discussions because we're like, okay, she's 5. It's kind of normal for tantrums, but this is kind of extreme. And then it got worse. So she started talking about suicide, and that was absolutely the scariest moment that we've experienced as a family, was when she started talking about specifically how she would do it. And we had never discussed that in front of her. We had never watched anything that she could have seen that had given her those ideas. So it was very strange. And when she would get to the point of angry and just over the top, it was almost like all of her personality and emotion just was gone. And it was just flat talk. Just, I want to kill myself. I want to do this. I want to put myself in an oven. I don't want to be here anymore. It was very robotic and just not herself. She's a bubbly, lively, just spunky kid. She is the best thing. But it was very scary to see this just random change in her. So we took her to the pediatrician, and they kind of shrugged it off as, oh, she's getting older and, tantrums, and this could be her way of manipulating into getting something that she wants. But we just felt deep down our gut, we knew something more was going on. So ignoring what the pediatrician said, we decided to dig further, and we took her to a psychiatrist. And it was the same psychiatrist that helped me with my diagnosis, and she was actually a patient first before I was. So we took her to him, and he listened to us talk about her and how it wasn't all the time that she was doing this, but it was mostly when she was coming down with a cold or just some sort of viral infection that was kind of going on. It was exacerbated. So he decided to run a panel of blood work. I think it was called the Cunningham panel, which is just a deep dive into your autoimmune and just all the different things that normal blood panels don't look for. So I'm very grateful that he did that, because it did come back with an autoimmune disorder, and very similar to my case, it just didn't say specifically what it was. So he recommended that we go to the Amen Clinic, and Dr. Daniel Amen is a neurologist, and he specializes in these neurology places, these clinics that are for mental health patients, and they do these SPECT scans. So the SPECT scan is like a 3D map of the brain's flow, and how the tissue is reacting in the brain. So it's just this big 3D image of just all the activity going into your brain and seeing all the different type of receptors and tissue and blood flow and all of that. So it's very interesting. Day one, we go in and they have her do this like typing test kind of thing, and she starts to get flustered. It was meant to get her to get like going so that they could do a scan right after and kind of see what was going on when she hits that heightened state. So she's doing the test, she's getting flustered, and then they took her in for the scan. And they did the scan, and then we came back the next day. And instead of trying to like get her flustered, they tried to keep her calm. So they put us in a quiet room, turned off the lights, kind of calm, like let her lay it in my lap, and just kind of kept her calm. And then they did the scan, and then I had two to compare to. So they had like what normal calm was and what was like flustered, heightened emotion. And the two were very telling as far as there was a lot of inflammation around her brain, and it was hitting the points that control emotion regulation and just thought process. So they said she has very severe ADHD, and she has what's called PANS. And that, I had to write it down because I can never remember the entire acronym, but it's Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. So it is basically like when you get sick with a viral infection, it just kind of lingers and it can cause issues in your brain. So while she recovered and her symptoms were mild from COVID, it actually caused a lot of damage in and around her brain. So some people have heard of PANDAS, which is similar thing, but it's specifically caused by strep throat, which she, to my knowledge, has never had strep throat. They diagnosed her with this, and they showed us the images of the scans, and it was crazy. Her brain was lit up like a firework. It was just active both days, both when she's heightened and calm. Is just active. So they immediately wanted to start her on like a vitamin regimen. And we knew going into this that they were probably going to diagnose her with ADHD because of the behavior that was exhibited. But we knew we weren't going to put her on stimulants at 5. So we wanted to try the most natural remedy that we could as far as treatment. But we also just wanted her to get help, because when she was having these fits of rage, you could tell she just, when she kind of came back down from it, it was like she just had this scared look in her eyes where she was just like, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I said those things. And it was scary for everybody involved. And, you know, I do have to say that at that moment before we did this scan and everything, I thought I needed to pray to God. I've got to pray to God because I feel like the devil is like he's trying to make his way into destroying my daughter. And luckily, my mother-in-law and my father-in-law are both pastors, and they happened to be living with us at the time. So we read from the Bible, and we would just read to her each night a scripture and just kind of make sure that we knew that like this was not it's crazy to say it, and I know this is gonna sound crazy, but like we would never perform an exorcism, but I'm just saying like that's kind of where we were like, what is happening? Because this was just not normal. So we would read from the scripture and just make sure that there was nothing supernatural going on before we got this official medical diagnosis. So once the SPECT scan was done, Dr. Amen has his own line of vitamins for the brain. You can go on the website. It's called Brain MD. And we ordered like a lot of omegas, GABA, zinc, all that kind of stuff. They have different kinds that are for sleep that have like melatonin and zinc and valerian root and just all kinds of different natural things. So they wanted to do that, but also they wanted to try to put her on stimulants, which we said absolutely not unless we didn't have an option. And so we tried like blood pressure medication. So she's on a very low dose of a blood pressure medication, and it's been working. So, and then there was a lot of things that we had to change about her eating habits. So we had to cut back on a lot of things because with that testing that we did in that blood panel, she's allergic to gluten and egg whites, or sorry, eggs and dairy, just all kinds of different things that she's allergic to that can exacerbate this inflammation in her brain. So whenever she comes down with like a cold or the sniffles or even just allergies, her body is fighting itself on top of fighting the infection. Her normal behavior is gone. And we can usually tell that she's about to get sick, which actually, as I'm recording this now, she is sick. And unfortunately, we did have a situation where her emotions got heightened and there was a lot of this kind of back to where it was at square one. But we know now what to do because it's been 4 years of this. So she's not on any crazy medications. She's only on one prescription medication, and that's the blood pressure medicine. And then everything else is just strictly supplements and vitamins. And then we took away a lot of the extra dyes and stuff out of the food. And she doesn't eat dairy. We do, almond milk instead of regular milk. So we cut back on a lot of things. And then we also did things that would soothe her. But when she would have these tantrums, a lot of friends and family were saying, you just got to punish her. You're not disciplining her correctly. It's not anything that's going on with her. You're just not disciplining her correctly, which parents that are trying to figure out what's going on with their daughter, that's not what you want to hear. You don't want to hear that you're failing as a parent. And at that time, we didn't know what to do. With this diagnosis, even then, we still didn't know what to do because it wasn't an overnight fix. It was a long time of us sticking consistently with a plan in place for her and a safe plan, because we had to make sure that even though we knew that she wouldn't act on anything or actually do anything to harm herself, we had to make sure that in the off chance that she actually tried, that she was safe. So we put locks on the windows to make sure that, because she had at one time threatened to jump out the windows. So we put locks on the windows, and, we put a camera in her room just to make sure that she was safe when she was in there. And I knew that to some people that probably sounds crazy, but at that point we wanted her to be safe. That's all we wanted. We needed her to be okay. So we continued with the plan as far as treatment, and a lot of it has worked. And what we've realized is that through trial and error, whether it's discipline, we do take away things. We take electronics away. We take, toys away, stuff that we know she likes to do. When she gets in trouble, we do discipline her. But when she gets to this point where she's exhibiting this behavior that's like very heightened, is usually when we could tell, like, okay, she's probably about to start coughing or runny nose is coming next. Like, we can tell now. So it was affecting her at school as well. So that's why we ended up getting her on the blood pressure medicine, because we didn't want her, like, she's so incredibly intelligent. And then she had so much potential in school that I didn't want her behavior to be the only thing that's holding her back, because she was in kindergarten reading on a fourth grade reading level, and her principal was coming out to me telling me how they were putting her in name the advanced classes, because as a kindergartner she's reading on a fourth grade reading level. So she's incredibly intelligent. She's so smart, and she's so talented. As far as her outlet has been piano. And I thank God every day for my sister-in-law giving us this piano, because I didn't think at first when we said we would take it, I didn't think that it would actually be used, honestly. I was like, this would be like a good decoration piece. But one day we had it set up in our foyer, and our daughter goes over and puts on a song and listens to it and mimics it. She plays it exactly how it was just played on the video. And I was shocked also confused. I was like, have you been practicing that? She said, no, I want to hear it first so that I can play it. So, with that, we immediately put her in piano lessons, because if that's her outlet, and that's where she feels safe and okay, and that's how she calms down, is playing the piano and playing music, then I will pay whatever I need to get her that therapy. So we put her in piano lessons, and her piano instructor is a godsend as well. And he's been incredibly patient with her. He knows everything, and he has also expressed how incredibly talented she is. And so we got her in these lessons. He's trying to teach her how to read music, because we want her to be able to read the music so that she can, when she gets older, or if she's still into music, that she can write her own music. But she is still set on, she has to hear it first and then play it. So the piano instructor has kind of struggled back and forth with her on, no, I need you to read me the notes so that you can play them, because she'll wait for him to play it once so that she can just play it by memory. So that's been an incredible outlet for her as well. We have her in play therapy, so she's going to a therapist. She's talking to all the right people. At school, we applied for the 504 program. We got her into an IEP, an individual education plan, so that she would have extra resources in the event that she did have this, escalation of behavior, outbursts. So that the school, also incredible, has worked with us. They approved her 504, they approved her IEP. They gave her extra resources if she needed it, because they were like, she does not need resources as far as obtaining and knowing the material that is presented for her in class, but it is just strictly behavior and staying on task. So they had extra resources for her, and there was an at school psychologist that if she did have a bad day, they would send her there, and she had a piano in the classroom and would let her play a song, and it would kind of calm her down. So her teachers have worked with us. Luckily, this year, before the end of the school year, we met with the board, and they said that she no longer qualified for the 504 or the IEP, and that it was a very good thing, because she had come a long way from kindergarten to now going into 5th grade. So she is doing so much better now. I'm glad that we listened to our guts, and that we didn't just say, this is just normal 5-year-old temper tantrums, and that we just need to do better at disciplining her, because it didn't work. It didn't work for her. It just made her more angry. The only thing that works is giving her space to calm down and talking to her. Once she calms down, then she realizes what she's done. She apologizes, we talk it out, and we move on, and we learn. So that has worked for her, and that's worked for us. Unfortunately, I have not seen a whole lot of doctors recognize this diagnosis, other than the specialists that we've gone to. On Facebook, there's forums, and there's other communities out there of parents that have gone through similar things, and that have had the similar diagnosis with their children and their struggles. And I see a lot of people struggle with going to the doctor, getting diagnosed, and them being told that their child just needs discipline. You just need to discipline your child more. That doesn't help anything. It doesn't help what's going on, because I can tell that my child is hurting on the inside. I could see in her eyes the confusion as to why she's saying these things, and why she's screaming at me and telling me she hates me, or why she's saying she wants to kill herself by putting herself in the oven or jumping out the window. At one point, she ran away from home a couple of times, actually. I had to chase her down the road. So we knew that just wasn't normal 5-year-old behavior, and we stuck to it. And luckily, we found the right doctors, right specialists. And I'm very grateful for everybody that has been involved in helping her along the way, and helping us, supporting us, and not telling us that we're failing as parents, because it's really hard. It is very hard in those moments when she's at her highest moment, where she's screaming, throwing things, and it's very hard not to look at yourself and say, what have I done wrong as a parent? where have I gone wrong? But sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes you could do everything right and it still be wrong. So hope that this video can kind of help, shed light on this diagnosis. And if there's any parents out there that feel like there's something more going on with their child that's exhibiting this aggressive, sudden onset change of behavior, then definitely don't give up on what your gut is telling you, because a lot of doctors will say, just give him medication. It's fine. Here's some medicine. Nothing's wrong. It's all in your head. So don't give up. They may not be they could be ill, So when she does get these colds, the inflammation gets more around her brain. She has more inflammation around her brain, and it causes her to react certain ways. I mean, we know that now. We work on it, and we know how to get her to calm down. So if you are struggling, or if you have a child that is struggling, I'm here to say that there could be another answer, there could be another solution out there that could help you. And I hope that this helps somebody out there that could be struggling. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to comment below, reach out to me. I'd be happy to share more details on specific specialists that we have seen and medications and vitamins that have worked for her. So please feel free to reach out, or if you would like to share your story, would love to hear it and know that I'm not the only one dealing with this. So again, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Trauma Mamas. And if you would, please like and subscribe and tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you.